The attributes of Allah. The word Allah is lafzul jalala, the expression of majesty. It is the alam, the proper name or proper noun of adhatul muqaddas, the holy self, the only mustahiq, deserving of worship or entitled to worship. Hence, the named one, Allah, is a that self. And his self is his reality, not a body. The selves of the creatures are their bodies. His self is also called his nafs and his wajh. This self is ascribed with attributes. He says, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. Allah has the sublime ascription, the attributes of perfection. A sifa, wasf, an attribute or ascription or description, is what informs about a self, what tells about a self. It is also permissible to use the term not, according to some, like At-Tahawi, because At-Tahawi said Allah is men'ut. That means someone who has a not. It means mawsuf, described or attributed. So not means sifa, attribute. The scholars also use ma'na, meaning, to mean attribute or something more than the mere self. Because we're talking now about a self and an attribute. So if there's an attribute, there must be a self. So one conceives a self. Then whatever's more than the self is what? It's going to be an attribute of the self. Those are sometimes called meanings, ma'ani. So like knowledge, what you understand from knowledge is not merely a self, but something more than the self. Or life, or hearing, that's something more than the mere self. Or something additional to the meaning of the self. When learning the books of the scholars, the context must be observed. Sometimes sifa or wasf, attribute, is used for the derived names of Allah. Derived means extracted, taken from a source. Derived names that are taken from some source. Like Al-Khaliq, the creator, that's a derived name. Where is it derived from? It's derived from the word khalq. Khalq, creating. So from this we get a descriptive name. Al-Khaliq, the creator. So this descriptive name or derived name, you can call it an attribute of Allah. It is also permissible to refer to the names of Allah as his attributes, except the name Allah, because it refers to his self, not any particular attribute. When the attribute's contrary meaning is impossible and imperfection for Allah, such as ignorance being contrary to knowledge, then it is an attribute of the self. So all the 13 attributes are attributes of the self. Because if you consider what's contrary to them, then it's an imperfection for Allah Ta'ala. So existence, it's what's contrary to that is non-existence or nothingness. Beginninglessness, contrary to that is having a beginning. Having no partner, having a partner. Having no similar, having a similar. Having no need, having a need. Life, death, knowledge, ignorance, power, weakness, hearing, deafness, sight, blindness, speech, dumbness or muteness. So when the attribute's contrary meaning is impossible and imperfection for Allah, such as ignorance being contrary to knowledge, then it is an attribute of the self. When the attribute's contrary meaning is not impossible nor imperfection for Allah, like providing or not providing, that is a doing. And their difference about the doings shall come. So the doings of Allah, you can say Allah is the creator of life and He's the creator of death. And He's the one who provides and He's the one who restricts the provision. And He's the one who gives honor and He's the one who makes you low. Then those are called al-af'al or sifatul af'al, the attributes of doings. So the other ones are called sifatul that, the attributes of the self. And these are called sifatul af'al, the attributes of doings or actions. You know the difference between them by investigating the contrary meaning. So if the contrary meaning is impossible for Allah, that's an attribute of the self. If the contrary meaning is not impossible, then that's an attribute of the doing. وَسُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ وَبِحَمْدِهِ